This is the Hauger History Podcast on iTunes and around the world. Follow us on Twitter at Hauger History. Welcome to the 6th century on a 6th grade edition on the 23rd of October. Yeah, there's no 6 there. Mr. Hauger here on a Sunday, recording the weekly podcast today for the 6th grade edition to talk about the Aksum Empire. Most studies in California will feature Aksum following Kush, following Egypt in a chronological progression of 6th grade California standards, but it's well known now that most of the country and a lot of the world is studying the ancient empire of the Aksum, A-K-S-U-M, but you'll sometimes, I've noticed in some textbooks around the world, see A-X-U-M, which is also easy to pronounce. But the earliest period that we know of, the societal complexity with large elite cemeteries, written language, and many of innovations of Egyptian descent because of trade along the Nile influenced this culture beginning about 400 BC for what is sometimes called the Proto-Aksumite period, but most books aren't going to break down the 6 or 7 phases of the Aksum Empire. But we will talk about its height and what made it important and why it is in so many of our books and why we study Aksum. By the 6th century, society was beginning to be stratified. You learned about the Egyptian society and the pyramid already, and why so many people needed to be at the bottom to support people at the top, and why 20,000 people working for 20 years could build a pyramid to honor someone who was an elite king. With Aksum, you have an upper elite made up of kings and nobles, a lower elite, which was lower status nobles and families that had farms that were large enough to devise wealth, and ordinary people, including farmers and craftsmen. They also had palaces. That was a big deal for large gatherings, and they could have either monuments or royal elite and get-togethers. And these palaces involved rock-cut, multi-chambered tombs and pointed towers. They were a little different than the Egyptian pyramids. They even had some underground rock-cut tombs, hypogeum, were constructed with large multi-storied superstructures inside underground, which is really amazing. Also interesting that the economic system was beginning to progress to the point of minting coins, stone and clay seals, and pottery tokens also for the exchange of goods and services. Written history is something we talk a lot about in Aksum. In 7th grade, we've been discussing Africa, and I've tried to mention the context of just because there was not as much written history does not mean that there was not significant progress being made. But one of the reasons that we know so much about Aksum is the importance of the written documents that was placed by the rulers, particularly Asianus and Izana. These oldest securely manuscripts and have dates on them in Ethiopia from the 6th and 7th centuries AD. But there's also evidence of a lighter and less permanent parchment paper from animal skins, possibly from leather, not the same as the parchment paper used in modern-day cooking, not as ancient anyways. Production in the region is dated back to 200 years after the start of that empire, and that they were also scripts and scribal schools that were happening with documents that contain contacts and relationships and written records between residents of the Nile Valley. So you get just a ton of history left behind, which makes it easier to tell and understand the story and have less historians putting together ideas because we can see written evidence from Meroe, the true ruler over parts of Asia and Africa, and the constructions of monumental architecture, which include obelisks, the tallest of which is 30 meters or 100 feet tall and weighs over 500 tons and serves as a cemetery. Izana is also known for converting much of Ethiopia to Christianity, which is perhaps another reason that the Western world focuses so heavily on the research of this area. Legend has it that the Ark of the Covenant, containing the remnants of Moses and the Ten Commandments, was brought to Aksum, and Coptic monks have been protecting the area ever since. So there is a sense of Christian Holy Land within this region also, which makes it important to study. Naples University in Italy is actually composing an archaeological expedition that's been underway since the 1970s, and over the last 40 years, the British Institute has also been excavating Aksum. So they're finding hundreds of new sites even today. So that's one of the common reasons why we study history, because history is still being devised and developed and understood even in modern day. So that's pretty cool stuff. This northern Ethiopian area, also as part of southern Arabia, is known for its merchants who traded as far as Alexandria and beyond the Nile River, continued to dominate the Red Sea coast until the end of the 9th century. Britannica, just giving credit to where these next couple of facts are coming from, has been updating their site on Aksum as late as 2015 because of new relationships that have been found along Somaliland, with Somalia and Djibouti and many other areas, where they're finding more coins and relics and updating the books about how authority and politics and religion were all linked with these new sources of evidence that are being found. You can find a great number of resources if anyone out there is composing a large project in this area by consulting the resources of the Encyclopedia Britannica. There's a great place. And now just a couple of fun facts, because this is just a cursory overview of the Kushites. Many of them did read the Bible, and it influenced them to become Christians. They also had a three-headed lion god, Epidemic, who, if you remember some of your other cultural inhabitants, is once Western religions and missionaries start spreading their religion, some locals still hold on to some traditional gods in kind of a hybrid belief theory. The pyramids of the Kushites were similar, but Egypt only had pointy tops. Kushites actually had flat-topped pyramids, which might become a true or false question depending on the region. And I've talked to some other middle school social studies teachers that usually throw that one in as well, or have them construct some kind of a flat-top pyramid. If there is an age or a name, it's the Iron Age for Kush, the Iron Age. Other kingdoms really wanted that iron, and I told my sixth graders how amazing it is to look back at a time before large forges and foundries and modern mechanisms and technology made it easy to handle molten metals, that they were able to craft weapons and tools with iron that were so complex and would give them an advantage and let them be dominant in their trade at the time for those materials. The capital of Kush is Meroe. It was in the middle of the 5th and 6th cataract. Cataracts are waterfalls, another vocabulary word for you. And that Kushites would adapt and borrow many things from Egypt, including temples, region, and clothing. Ancient Kush was south of the ancient Egypt and also along the Nile River. Remember, if you weren't on the Nile at that time, you were more or less in a desert. So there's some fun facts and some interesting things to get you started with ancient Kush and Aksum. Many important details, innovations, and social structures and hierarchies, perhaps the single most influential for the way that we would continue to establish and evolve in societies and civilizations. Well, that was a quick 7.5 minutes, wasn't it? If you want to request an episode, you can follow us on Twitter at Hauger History or email haugerhistory@gmail.com. Don't forget you can subscribe for all of the updates for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade topics, and you can request topics as well. Wow, put your chairs in, turn in your homework, and we'll see you on the next edition. This is just a little bit of Ancient Aksum, and we'll talk to you more later. Have a great week, everybody, and treat each other well out there. See you next time.